Hello and welcome back. This is the sixth in a series of short video tutorials demonstrating how Veggie Compass can be used to give small and mid-scale horticultural farmers a much fuller picture of their farm finances than traditional record-keeping systems provide. Whether you actually decide to use Veggie Compass yourself is not as important as learning the concepts this tool allows us to demonstrate. These tutorials are designed to be viewed chronologically, so if you've stumbled into the middle, you'll want to go back and start at the beginning. I suspect you are excited to see what kinds of information the Veggie Compass system has come up with. We'll look at the next 3 spreadsheets that Veggie Compass has created for us, one at a time. The important concepts in this tutorial are that learning the cost to produce a crop up to harvest and learning the cost to harvest and pack that crop can help us determine which crops are costing the most to produce, where we could make changes to decrease the cost to get produce grown and ready for market, and 3, if we would actually lose more money by harvesting a poor crop. This cost of production sheet is massive. Viewed at 100%, it takes up 2 complete screens. So let's get oriented. The crop list runs down column A, same as before. And across the top of the page, in line 1, are the different components of production cost, as we've seen before. Across line 3, in gray, Veggie Compass has calculated some total costs, all labeled here, above each calculation. These are some interesting figures generated here that you may want to study, but the ones that get me excited are the rest of the lines, because they're calculating costs for each of our crops. The data that you input before shows up in the lighter colored columns, like here in columns B, D, and so forth. The calculations Veggie Compass is making are in the darker shaded columns, like here in columns E and I. We're not going to explain all of these calculations, but remember that you can use the formula bar to look and see how each calculation in each cell is made. In the first section, Veggie Compass is providing the cost of the crop up to harvest. This includes seed, greenhouse, and field growing costs. Now is when the program plugs in things like those non-crop specific labor hours, allocating them to each crop. The actual labor cost per hour is now being used to calculate the labor costs for each crop. Here in column E, we see the total cost of operating the greenhouse, supply costs, energy costs, and labor costs. Veggie Compass will now allocate that total cost to each transplanted crop by how many plants are grown in the greenhouse. Total cost of production for each crop before harvest is now in column O. This number is the production expense that you've sunk into the crop up until harvest time. It does not include the general management costs. They'll make an appearance in the next sheet. But still, you can start seeing some interesting things about cost to produce here. The next big section is the harvest and pack section, columns Q through Y. As with the field growing, information from previous sheets is used to provide harvest and pack costs for each crop shown in column Y. The grand totals are in the last 2 columns, AA and AB. Column AA is the total cost to produce, harvest, and pack each crop as a whole. And then column AB is the total production and harvest cost per unit. Isn't it great to be able to see all of these totals? When you start analyzing, you'll find that the data that has been generated in some of these other columns on this cost of production sheet will also provide useful information for making management decisions. For example, you may find the numbers in column V, harvest and pack labor cost per unit, useful should you find yourself wondering if you should even harvest a poor standing crop at all. This column will tell you what it would cost to get that crop out of the field and ready to go to market. If the price you can get at market is not higher than this harvest cost, then you should leave the crop in the field. That's a foreign concept to most growers. So if you just can't let that crop go, then maybe you should donate it to charity and take the tax write-off. But do think seriously about the impacts to your bottom line before you harvest a crop. Of course, any price that you receive that's higher than the cost to harvest and wash, even if it's just a little bit higher, will contribute to covering the production cost that you've already sunk into the crop. But even then, you have to determine if you should be paying your workers to do something else on the farm that's maybe more important and would result in even higher economic returns. On this cost of production sheet, already we can see some surprising numbers with my numbers. Here is the first place to start discerning winning and losing crops. Let's look at broccoli. My total cost of production and harvest is $6.77 per pound. Even in my excellent urban markets, broccoli will never fetch that kind of price. On the other hand, the total cost of production of perennial herbs is 62 cents a bunch. Now I know I can get a much higher price than that for herbs. So herbs look like they should turn out to be quite a profitable crop. Let's look here at chard. Similarly, chard comes out with a total cost to grow, wash, and pack of $2.06 per bunch. Knowing that I can charge $3 a bunch at most markets, I suspect that chard will come out looking pretty profitable as well. What we'll learn in the next tutorial is that herbs do end up as a profitable crop, but chard does not. Stay tuned to find out why. Before we leave this sheet, I want to remind you that this total cost of production does not include general management and marketing costs. So these are not yet the final crop costs, but we're getting there. In the next tutorial, we'll get to the total crop cost per unit, and we'll start to see whether we made or lost money on each of our crops. See you then.